We just took our test over Unit 3, and Unit 3 is all about adding and subtracting numbers. It's about adding whole numbers, adding and subtracting whole numbers, adding and subtracting numbers that involve decimals, adding and subtracting numbers that involve fractions. Tomorrow we will start our next unit, which is Unit 4. It's going to be about multiplying and dividing. But before we start Unit 4, I want to take a minute to insert perimeter. Why do you think I would want to insert perimeter at this time? Yes?
Because it may be on the
next test. It has nothing to do with the test. Think about what actions are involved when you're trying to find perimeter. Yes.
Adding.
Mainly adding.
So
A little bit of multiplication, but we'll talk about that. But mostly it's adding. And in 5th grade, we talk about 3 different kinds of units of measurement, which would be perimeter, area, and then we add volume in 5th grade. And so trying to make sure that we are understanding all 3 of those separately and we don't get them confused is my main goal. We're not letting anyone else use the restroom at this time, so go ahead and have a seat. If somebody knocks, we'll figure that out, okay? So go ahead and start with our title, perimeter.
okay.
Like I said, this is like a one-day inserted lesson. And hopefully after watching Math Antics, you were able to understand that perimeter is the distance around an object. And it's important to understand that it's the shortest distance. The shortest distance around an object. Okay? Some words that come to mind when I think about perimeter might be the word edge. Okay? And sometimes you hear the word the rim. Rim is kind of easy to remember because do we have the word rim in the word perimeter? Yes, we do. Okay? I'll give you a second to get caught up with me. And because later on in the year we're going to be talking about how to find area, how to find volume, it's really important to understand that perimeter is one-dimensional. One-dimensional. So as you listen to that video, Math Antics, he was referring to the string and finding the distance around. That's one-dimensional because basically you're outlining your exterior area or your perimeter, and then you're stretching that string out and you're finding that linear length. Okay? So perimeter is one-dimensional. Like a string. Okay. So we always want to remember our units because our units tell us not only what unit we're measuring in, but it also is going to give us an idea of what kind of measurement we're looking at. So again, as we learn more about perimeter, and then area, and then volume, we're going to be measuring in different kinds of units. Sometimes those will be just regular units. When we learn more about area, we'll be talking about square units. And then when we talk about volume, we'll talk about cubic units. So we want to make sure that we understand that. That again is why we're separating perimeter and talking about perimeter separately from area and volume. So I have some strategies that I want you to write down. Some strategies for finding perimeter. I hope everybody is writing this down. Strategies. Okay? So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about is an irregular shape. When you hear the word irregular, what comes to your mind? Irregular shapes. Think about what you have been talking about in, I think with Miss Graff, right? You have prefixes over there?
No, that's you.
Oh, in Miss McGee's room? I don't know. Where do you talk about?
I thought we did irregular shapes. Irregular shapes.
What does irregular mean? Deanne. Not regular. You can even write that underneath. Not regular. When we think about irregular shapes, that means they're not regular. It's not a regular shape. None of the sides are the same. Okay? They're not equal. So when we have shapes like maybe a star, maybe an arrow, maybe even an octagon, we just add all the shapes, add all the sides to find those measurements. I just wrote the wrong one. Add all sides, which is pretty easy. That's probably what your teacher taught you in maybe 3rd grade or 2nd grade whenever you started learning about this. Your teacher was like, add all the sides. Perimeter is around the rim, around the rim, around the rim. Perimeter is around the rim, add all the sides. Well, guess what? You may be thinking to yourself, Mrs. Barlow, that's crazy that you're singing, but you know, it's kind of like a bad commercial. It gets stuck in your head. And then what do? You remember it. When your brain is needing to like grasp onto something and try to remember, you go back to those things that you're like, oh, that terrible commercial, that terrible song that Mrs. Barlow was singing, right?
It's stuck in my
Okay.
head. Yeah. Thank you.
So that's strategies for irregular shapes. But sometimes we have regular shapes like a rectangle. And for a rectangle, we're going to have a formula. Formula. Ooh, that sounds so middle school.
Nah, it sounds like a baby formula.
So I want you to draw a rectangle in your notes. Just like that. And I'll move my camera up so that you guys can see a little bit better. And I want you to describe this as a length. And we're going to use a cursive L to describe that. And we're going to describe this as the width, and it's kind of like a cursive W. Well, what we know about this shape is that we have a top and a bottom that are identical in length. We have a side and another side that are identical in length. And when we have things that are identical, we can use multiplication to help us find that quickly. So one way to think about this would be to say take the length and multiply it by 2 and put parentheses around it. Take the width and multiply it by 2 because we have 2 of them and put parentheses around it. And when you get the totals for each, you're going to add them to find the perimeter. Now you've probably seen this formula on a mathematics chart.
yeah.
Some people think of it differently, and they may think of it like this. I just want to take the length, add it to the width, and then multiply that by 2 to get the perimeter. Does that give you the exact same information?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. These two are represented differently, but they mean the same thing. Okay? And finally, for a square. What do you know about a square?
It has equal sides.
It has all equal sides. So when we draw a picture of a square, we want to represent it as having equal sides. And so what that really means is if I know the length of one side, then I know the length of all the sides. So if I have a side length, then the quick way to solve this is to say side times 4 equals perimeter. That's what that means. And I bet you have seen both of these formulas on mathematics charts. But now that we know a little bit more about parentheses and a little bit more about variables, does this help make more sense to you?
Yes.
Yes. So let me tell you what the expectation is now. The expectation is now that we're going to practice a little bit of perimeter. You're going to receive this paper. It has 9 problems. All of these are irregular shapes for the most part. 9 on the front, 3 more on the back that are all related to perimeter.
Yeah.
You're going to need to calculate this on a piece of notebook paper because there just isn't enough room to do this well on the paper that's provided. Besides that, I don't grade messy work. If you put all your calculations on here, I'm going to hand you a brand new paper because I'm not going to grade that. Okay? I expect you to use notebook paper. Down here at the bottom, we want to know the rainfall totals for town 1, for town 2, for town 3, and for town 4. So I expect you to add those totals to get me an answer. And then finally, we just have a quick review. 6 little problems where we're adding some numbers involving decimals. While you're doing that, I'm going to be pulling you to review your test from yesterday. But before we get started, I just want to do a quick little this is what I would do if I were doing this problem. If we go back to the perimeter, I would do 2 sides plus 2 more sides and then take those answers to find my final perimeter. If you want to do it like that, A-okay. If you want to do 4 numbers stacked, there's room for error when you do that, but if that's the way you want to do it, that's okay too. But I would expect you to show your work on notebook paper. Are there any questions?
No.
All right.